important for us to remember on days like today. There's a lot of partisanship, there's a lot of division, and there are reasons to hope that things can actually move forward. So let's walk you through the process first, and then we're going to stay with us when the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, steps to the microphone. We will dip into that live. Also, just so you know what's coming, Representative John Curtis, who is currently standing on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., will run to the phone and dial in coming up here at 1:20. And then we're going to break down some of the things that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said inside the chamber to both Democrats and Republicans, and most important, to the American people as an audience. And so we're going to do that for the next 3 segments of the show here. So stay with us as we go through this. They're important principles for all of us to think through. And not only is this a quick look back in terms of the chaos and the things that we've seen over the last few weeks, more importantly, it shows a roadmap forward in terms of actually getting the people's business done, which is what all of this should be all about. So let's start late last night. Again, Tom Emmer stepped aside, and within just a couple of hours after that, Louisiana Representative Mike Johnson became the Speaker nominee for the Republicans. This morning, just a few hours ago, New York Representative Elise Stefanik gave the nomination speech for Mike Johnson. She quoted another who spoke during the GOP meetings yesterday, Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Rodgers spoke about the important element of trust, and Representative Stefanik relayed these statements on the floor of the House as she nominated Mike Johnson to be the Speaker.
Trust has been broken, and we have come to a standstill. How do we restore trust between members, leadership, and ultimately between Congress and we, the people? There's a sense that it cannot be business as usual. The times in which we are living demand boldness, unity, and transformational leadership that begins with trust in God and each other. Trust is when the magic happens.
I actually love that phrase. Trust is when the magic happens, especially in America. And it's one of the things you've heard me say on this program many times, that it's one thing for us to lose some of the trust we have in our elected officials. It's another thing when we start to lose trust in the institutions. And we really have a problem when we lose trust in each other. And I think that's an important framing for everybody, regardless of political persuasion. That's not the issue. Trust is what actually matters, and trust actually leads to that boldness, to that transformational leadership moment. And so building that trust is going to be what we like to call a big bite and a long chew for the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And he's actually stepping to the microphone right now. And let's go ahead and dip into this. This is live on the steps of the United States Capitol. Newly minted Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is making an address.
One of the things he truly represents is perseverance and hope. And as he was talking here just a moment ago, I was reminded of the scripture that says suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. What we need in this country is more hope. The people have lost their faith in our institutions. Their faith is at an all-time low. And one of the reasons they've lost it is because the Congress over the years has not delivered for the American people well enough. We're in the majority right now. We've gone through a little bit of suffering. We've gone through a little bit of character building. And you know what it's produced? More strength, more perseverance, and a lot of hope. And that's what we're about to deliver to the American people. Yeah. We're going to speak with clarity and conviction and consistency to the American people. We're going to tell them what we're for, what agenda we are pursuing, and why it is best for every American, why it will give them more liberty, opportunity, and security. We're going to speak to that clearly. We're going to act consistently, and we're going to exhibit 2 things here, trust and teamwork. And this group will deliver for the American people. I said it in the chamber, and I will say it here. We're going to govern well, and I think the people are going to be very pleased with those results. We're so grateful. I'm so grateful and so humbled to have gotten a unanimous vote on the floor by all of my colleagues here. We went through a lot to get here, but we are ready to govern, and that will begin right away. You've all heard me talk a lot today, and I'm not going to belabor the point because the sun is bright and it's too warm for the fall. But I'll say this. We're going to dispense with all the usual ceremonies and celebrations that traditionally follow a new speakership, because we have no time for either one. The American people's business is too urgent in this moment. The hour is late, the crisis is great. In America, we hear you, and we are reporting again, as I said in there, to our duty stations. That will begin in just a few moments. This entire group is going to go back to the House floor, and we are going to pass our resolution in support of the nation of Israel, our closest ally in the Middle East. You're going to see an aggressive schedule in the days and weeks ahead. You're going to see Congress working as hard as it's ever worked, and we are going to deliver for the American people. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I want to thank you for being patient with us, and I promise you it'll be worth it. Yeah. God bless you. God bless you.
You've been listening to newly minted House Speaker Mike Johnson from Louisiana, holding first press conference there. And very interestingly, he said we're going to dispense with a lot of the pomp and circumstance and ceremonies that typically take place when a new Speaker of the House is sworn in. He informed his colleagues that they are to report back to the chamber, to the floor of the House, and they will immediately take up a resolution in support of Israel. That will be the first item on the agenda. I think that's a significant thing, to not go on to parties and celebrations and those kind of one-on-one press interviews, but that everyone should report back to their stations, report back to their duty. I think that's an important part of that process. If you're just joining us, Mike Johnson from Louisiana has been unanimously voted in by the Republicans as the Speaker of the House. The Democrats, of course, were in lockstep with Hakeem Jeffries, all 212 voting for Hakeem Jeffries there. All 220 of the Republicans voted for Mike Johnson today. And so a very fractured Republican caucus came in total unanimity today, something we haven't seen in the last 3 weeks. And now they say it's time to get back to business, to take the character lessons from the last 3 weeks and transform that into hope and to an agenda. Mike Johnson has talked about the need to restore trust in institutions, in elected officials, and in one another as American citizens. And so we're going to continue to break all of this down. It's an important day, and it's an important day regardless of your politics today. And I want to emphasize this as we round out this first segment, and that is, for all of the challenges and all the problems, the institutions held. Again, everybody keeps betting against it. Whether it was on January the 6th, whether it was after the Revolutionary War or the Civil War or a world war or a pandemic, people have been predicting the downfall of the institutions of our constitutional republic for over 247 years. And today, once again, they held. And the People's House is back in business. The work of the people will continue to move forward. Great debate will happen. Great disagreements will take place, exactly as it should be. We'll be right back. Representative John Curtis, who was there in the room, will join us coming up next. Stick around.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Colder weather is on the way.
We've got to get those sweaters and jackets ready.
And storms, too.
Thursday, Friday, 40s and 50s, mostly cloudy, some rain developing.
We have you covered as the seasons change. Stay updated with traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s. Mornings and afternoons on KSL News Radio.
Can't get enough of University of Utah sports? Then you need the Utah 360 app. What's Utah 360? It's a free app that lets you access the Utes like never before. Think player profiles, local KSL coverage, game stats and recaps, behind-the-scenes exclusives, and tons more. This is the perfect app for any University of Utah sports fan. So head to the App Store or Google Play Store to download for free today.
What's the biggest threat to your retirement savings today? Believe it or not, it's taxes. That's right, you could be paying a lot more taxes in retirement than you realize. Learn more in a free report, 3 retirement tax traps that could wipe out your savings. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. This free report reveals how you could avoid 3 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. To get this free report, call 801-896-9622. Don't needlessly overpay your taxes in retirement. Get this free report now by calling 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622. Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
This could be the start of a break-in.
Stop. This is Simply Safe.
Or the end of one. Introducing 24/7 Lifeguard Protection, only from Simply Safe. Now, monitoring agents can see and speak to intruders through our new indoor camera to help stop crime in real time and for fast police response. Get 20% off any new system with Fast Protect monitoring at simplysafe.com/radio. Advanced home security, 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact us at aimyourdigital.com for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. We are Bonneville Salt Lake. Your success starts at aimyourdigital.com.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
If you're just tuning in, within the last half hour, Representative Mike Johnson from Louisiana has been sworn in as the Speaker of the House of Representatives after a several-week process, a lot of infighting, a lot of division, and coming out with a unanimous vote by Republicans to become the Speaker of the House. We're going to track all of that, including a deep dive into the speech that he delivered in the chamber just a little bit ago that I think had some important things for every American, not just Republicans, not just Democrats. It's everybody. I think there are important lessons there as well. We want to go now live to someone who was in the room where it happened, Utah's own John Curtis, of course, representing Utah's 3rd Congressional District. And Representative Curtis, a very busy day in our nation's capital, and I know that the new Speaker of the House has already summoned everyone back to their stations in the chamber to get to work.
Well, it's nice to be busy, boys. I'll tell you, there's actually some good therapy to being busy.
A lot of good therapy to that. So as you watch this played out, and obviously yesterday was a real whirlwind of a day, lots of ups and downs with the nomination of Representative Emmer and then his withdrawal to be followed in close succession by Mike Johnson as being the designee, and then a unanimous vote today. Give us some sense in terms of the conversations that took place last night and what took place rolling into this morning.
Yeah, I wish all of your listeners could have lived my day yesterday. It started with a real low when Tom Emmer was selected as the Speaker designee, and I sat and listened to my colleagues say I could never vote for him, and then they would list a vote he had taken 3 years ago and say, because of that vote, I could never vote for you. I literally heard one of my colleagues say, I can't vote for you because you certified the election. And it seemed like a real low point, that people were becoming ridiculous. And imagine finding somebody who had never taken a vote that somebody in the Republican conference didn't agree with. And if that had become our standard, it was just a really bad place to be. And then I'll call it the Mike Johnson magic, Magic Johnson, is that he was able to take that climate in only a couple of hours and secure a unanimous vote, something no one would have predicted could happen. And I'm glad you mentioned his speech, because I think if people want to know how he did that, they need to listen to his speech, because some of that magic is in that speech, in his ability to articulate principles that connect with people and build trust. And that's what he did. He was able to build trust with 217 people in very short order where there was no trust.
Yeah.
And again, I'll refer to that speech. And if you want to see his style and how he did it, listen to that speech again.
Yeah, and we're actually going to break that down coming up at 1:35. We're going to go through it in its entirety because there were so many important messages, I think, for everyone. And I wanted to get your perception. You know Representative Johnson, now Speaker of the House. You have a good sense of who he is as a person, as an individual. He's not known to a lot of Utahns and even a lot of people across the country. He's a little under the radar that way. But I think one thing that stood out for me, and I'd love to see how this played out in the room as you witnessed it, he wasn't saying, trust me. He was saying, watch what's next, how we communicate with clarity and conviction and how we get to principle. But how did that play out in the room?
Well, you may have described a little bit of the magic, and also he put in writing his plan of how he was going to move through the next few weeks, how he was going to avoid a shutdown and yet not let the far right people down. And he was very, very intelligent, very articulate, and I think Americans will find that we've discovered a little bit of a diamond in the rough. And my prediction is, in several years, we'll look back and say, well, of course, we've always known Mike Johnson, and of course, that was an obvious selection for Speaker.
That's right. Success has a million fathers, and failure has none. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
As you describe that plan, I think that's been one of the most intriguing parts of all of this. Is that there has been a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, a lot of complaining, a lot of grievance, but not a lot of governing in terms of a plan. And so I think the fact that he laid out a plan to move forward had to be part of that magic that ultimately moved everyone into unanimity from real deep division.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the plan is brutal. We have canceled 2 weeks when I was supposed to be in the district, and the next 2 weeks have just been canceled. And I can't tell you the number of people that we've made commitments to that we will be, visiting them in the district or speaking at their events. And it doesn't come without a cost. And sometimes I feel like people don't feel like district work is as important as DC work, and I think that's a huge mistake to make that calculus.
Yeah, no question about that for sure. And so as you give your those that you represent in the 3rd District and all of us here in the state of Utah a sense of what we should be watching for in Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, give us one thing maybe under the radar that you've observed or experienced in your interaction with him that might be indicative of how he might lead.
He's surprisingly humble. And you would not expect that from the Speaker of the House. As a matter of fact, Speaker of the House, I think if you look in their job description, and you have to be an arrogant A-type personality, right? Yet his humbleness is not weakness. He knows how to play his humbleness to a strength. And I'll give you one example. Last night, after he secured the Speaker designee position, we went around the room and did a roll call vote to see how many people were willing to support him, even though they didn't vote for him originally. And he found opportunity as he was standing in front of us to make eye contact with everybody that said his name, and he gave them some kind of facial acknowledgement of gratitude. And quite frankly, it was touching to see that every person mattered to him and that it was that important to him. There were 3 people who voted present, and there were 20 people that were not there, and it was obvious that he was writing down every single one of those names, knowing he had work to go do, and he wasn't waiting for a staff member to hand him a list of names. He was going to write the names down himself. So there were just those little subtleties that I think people caught that helped build that trust, and I think show you the type of person he is. I'll just tell you quickly, if you don't mind. When he called me, they all call in advance of the election and try to secure your vote. And when he called me, I shared with him what I felt like was one of our problems, and I quoted Ezra Taft Benson that God will have a humble people. Either you can compelled to be humbled, or you can either choose to be humble, or you'll be compelled to be humble. And he just connected with me on that point and spent about 10 minutes talking about how important that was. And he has that ability and that humbleness, and that people have called him in the last 24 hours. They're starting to call him kind of the servant leader. And that's not easy to do, because you can't be meek in this position, but it's working for him, and I believe it will continue to work for him.
Yeah, that's such an important principle, that confidence is never arrogance. It's real confidence comes from that humility of having respect for the challenge and being ready for the task, and having a set of principles and a plan that can make all the difference. And Representative, before I let you get back inside the chamber, just last thought. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of chatter and clamor, especially nationally, about all of the division and all of the problems. As I looked at this today, it was just one more moment in our nation's history where we can say, guess what, guys? The institution held again. And it seems like everybody should celebrate that, regardless of the politics of it all.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'd love to just comment on it briefly. And I hear all the time, institutions are failing, and it's never been so bad. And I feel like saying, really, what about that Civil War? What about Watergate? What about Vietnam? And this is the beauty of our institutions. The founders, in this incredible wisdom, built a system where they may not have seen a vacating of the chair, but the system worked for a vacating of the chair. And yes, we lost 2 weeks, but in the grand scheme of things, 2 weeks is nothing. And 2 years from now, the 2 weeks won't matter. What will matter is that we picked a person who is third in succession to the presidency, and put them in place and picked the right person. And that's no small thing. Imagine the third in succession to the presidency was just selected. It's not just a Speaker of the House. This is somebody who could, under very difficult circumstances, be asked to lead the country. And you're right, the system held, and I think we got the right person in the job.
Representative John Curtis, thanks for taking us behind the scenes a little bit. Seeing those principles in play should give all of us a lot of confidence and a lot of trust, and everyone will continue to watch as we move it forward. Thanks for taking it to principle and helping us see how all of that unfolded. Representative, we'll let you get back to work because the House is back in session.
We got a lot to do.
All right.
Okay, best to you.
All right. Again, that's John Curtis joining us live from Washington, D.C. He's been in the rooms where it has happened over the last 24 hours, giving us incredible insight into how it all came about, and that the principle of humility may have been the secret sauce that made the difference in becoming a Speaker of the House. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. We're going to continue to dive into this when we come back on Inside Sources. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana has been sworn in now as Speaker of the House. The seat had been vacant for 22 days. He already knows what he'll do once that gavel's in his hands. He shared his agenda earlier.
The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done.
President Biden wants to combine aid for Israel with aid for Ukraine, though some conservatives in Congress oppose that. Congressman Burgess Owens says he fully supports Congressman Mike Johnson's election as Speaker of the House. Owens says he was invigorated and inspired to witness the House address the selection of a new Speaker. He says Johnson's not just a friend and a teammate, but a proven conservative leader with the right qualities to lead the People's House. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A Category 5 hurricane crashed into the Pacific coast of Mexico near Acapulco early this morning. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says it was expected to bring catastrophic damage. Mexico's president says there have been no reports of deaths from the storm yet, but that could change as reports come in from hard-hit areas. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down 59 points, but the NASDAQ having a rough day, down 300 points right now. And coming up, we'll be hearing about a weather front moving in tomorrow. And that's next. KSL News Time is 1:32.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Your home's cooling system has been working hard all summer. Make sure your heating and cooling system continues to operate at peak efficiency by scheduling a $29 seasonal HVAC tune-up now with the pros at Yes. As the seasons change, you can count on Yes to help keep your family comfortable. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
Hey guys, are you over 30? Let's talk about testosterone and performance. Your testosterone can decline at an average of 1 to 2% a year after you turn 30. And Revive Men's Health have been experts at treating men with low testosterone and ED since 2011. We're the clinic guys come to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their performance. We love what we do and the patients we care for. You can ask our patients. We did, and we have a 99% patient satisfaction rate this year. Our patients even tell us we're more affordable than their insurance deductibles and copays. Let's get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. That's what we do, and we do it really well. Book your T-check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send us a private message at revivemenshealth.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
For drivers on the Valley freeways, we did have some slowdowns setting in on southbound I-15 approaching 90th South in Sandy, and it looks like we have had a small accident. Prior to that, it's been moved over to the shoulder, plus a crash called out 5600 West, 2300 South. Join the Utah Symphony for the greatest classical hits from the 1700s to today. Tickets start at $21. Get yours today at utahsymphony.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, warmer with south winds today, high of 73, turning colder with rain tomorrow, then continued cool weather through Saturday with a chance of showers. Right now, 72 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bonas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
If you're just joining us, within the last hour, Representative Mike Johnson from Louisiana has become the Speaker of the House of Representatives, voted in unanimously by every Republican member of the House of Representatives. To take that after 3 weeks of deep division within the Republican conference. They are in the majority, so it was their right and responsibility to choose a speaker, and today they did that. And we want to go back and break through and break down a couple of things. We started with just some of the things that were unfolding, including the fact that Representative Mike Johnson has already called the House back into session. Normally on a day when there is a new speaker, there are luncheons and meetings and get-togethers of all kinds, and he immediately called them back into session, and we expect just in the next few moments they will do their first order of business, which he pronounced would be to pass a resolution in support of Israel. We have also done, just in the last half hour, we had Representative John Curtis joining us live on the line from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. He's been in the room where it happened for the last 3 weeks, really, but in the last 24 hours in particularly. And he described to us in our last segment just how disheartened he was going into the evening last night with some of the pettiness and some of the inability of members of the House to get together and elect someone to be the speaker. Wondering if anybody could actually pass that test and get enough votes, that 217 required, to become the Speaker of the House. To the things that unfolded just in the last hour with Mike Johnson being sworn in. And Representative Curtis gave us some really interesting insight in terms of how that process played out. You're going to want to check out the podcast if you missed that later on and when that posts this afternoon at kslpodcast.com. Because there really were some important moments that I think happened within that. We're going to break some of those down. But one of the things that Representative Curtis pointed out to us, and I want to dig into, is the speech that new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, delivered inside the House chamber just a few moments ago, that really laid out what he had laid out to his colleagues the night before, that this was about trust, restoring trust in elected officials, in the institutions of government, and in one another as the American people. And so I want to dive into his speech. And again, I didn't think it was overly partisan. He had some good back and forth with Democrats as well as Republicans. There were things that they all united and stood for. And so I want to break this down. And again, set your politics aside for a minute, because the institutions held. John Curtis pointed this out to us, that there was no way that the founders could have anticipated a vacating of the chair, but the way they constructed the institution held. We should celebrate that every single day in this country. The institutions continue to hold, and it doesn't matter what we're up against, they continue to hold, and that should give us a lot of confidence to face the future. So to begin, as new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson spoke about the people's lack of trust in the institution of Congress.
I think all the American people at one time had great pride in this institution, but right now that's in jeopardy. And we have a challenge before us right now to rebuild and restore that trust. This is a beautiful country. It's the beauty of America that allows a firefighter's kid like me to come here and serve in this sacred chamber, where great men and women have served before all of us and strived together to build and then preserve what Lincoln did refer to as the last best hope of man on earth.
Mike Johnson, son of a firefighter, he talked about his dad being involved in a brutal firefight that really caused him to be in pain for the rest of his life, major burns, a major setback for him and his family, and the lessons learned, the character that gets forged in those kinds of challenges that actually and ultimately become hope in a better future. Mike Johnson went on to discuss the House needs to be mindful of the lack of trust from citizens in this country, that partisanship always contributes to the undermining of trust, and to understand that there is a difference between defending preferences versus attacking principles and ultimately getting to good policy.
We all know that we also live in a time of bitter partisanship. It was noted, and it's been on display here today. Right? When our people are losing their faith in government, when they're losing sight of the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world, I think we got to be mindful of that. We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles, because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences, because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end.
So an important thing in terms of laying out that piece of it, and one of the things that I appreciated that Mike Johnson said as the newly minted Speaker of the House, he didn't say trust us, he didn't say trust me, he said trust the principles, trust the institution, and watch what's next. And what was next was for him to suspend not only all of the pomp and circumstance of a day of electing a new speaker, calling them back into the chamber right now so that they could vote on a resolution in support of Israel. But as Representative John Curtis shared with us, he has actually suspended the in-state work period for the next 2 weeks. So members of Congress will not be going home over the next 2 weeks. They're going to stay and do the people's work. And there's a lot of work to be done, to be sure. But I love the fact that his first act was not to have a big celebration and say, oh, good, I'm the speaker, we can all celebrate. It was, no, we have work to do. In fact, we're going to make you stay and not go home. Representative Curtis said, now, some of that gets uncomfortable for representatives who are going to have to cancel town halls or meetings with constituents in the district or speaking engagements that they've committed to. And that's a hard part of that. But it's also the part that builds trust in all of that. And I think that's something we can all get behind, to be sure. One of the things that Mike Johnson pointed out, that as Speaker of the House, he was going to decentralize power in the Speaker's office rather than consolidate it, which speakers, both Democrat and Republican over the years, have done, consolidate power. He's going to decentralize it and create what could be the most important thing, a predictable process.
The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here. My office is going to be known for members being more involved and having more influence in our processes and all the major decisions that are made here, for predictable processes and regular order. We owe that to the people.
Predictable processes and regular order. We're going to come back to that as the week rolls on, because I think if there was anything that was going to restore confidence in the institutions, it is that predictable process and regular order. One of the things that he spoke about was the debt and the deficit. And usually we rack up lots of debt. We get a lot of out-of-control spending when we get outside of regular order and predictable process. So I'm going to put a pin in that one for newly minted Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. That's something he's going to have to deliver on for the good of all Americans. He also committed that this was going to be a Speaker's office that was going to be more transparent, more honest, and more in touch with where the country needs to go.
And I want to make this commitment to you, to my colleagues here and on the other side of the aisle as well. My office is going to be known for trust and transparency and accountability, for good stewardship of the people's treasure, for the honesty and integrity that is incumbent upon us, all of us, here in the People's House.
Transparency, honesty, and accountability. Those are all things that build trust, whether it's in our homes and communities, whether it's in our places of business, or whether it's in our nation's capital. Transparency, honesty, and accountability. And those are tough things to maintain when you've got a lot of outside influence that's coming in the institution. So that will be another big challenge. He's laid down a very significant marker. That's another one I'm going to be watching closely in the coming days. The newly minted Speaker of the House also explained how he was going to tackle one of the big national security concerns, which is actually our debt and deficit spending.
The greatest threat to our national security is our nation's debt. And while we've been sitting in this room, that's right, the debt has crossed almost $33.6 trillion. In the time that it's going to take me to deliver this speech, we'll go up another $20 million in debt. It's unsustainable. We have to get the country back on track. Now, we know this is not going to be an easy task, and tough decisions will have to be made. But the consequences, if we don't act now, are unbearable. We have a duty to the American people to explain this to them so they understand it well. And we're going to establish a bipartisan debt commission to begin working on this crisis immediately.
And then finally, in his closing remarks, Mike Johnson had a message for everyone around the world, allies and enemies alike.
Last thing I'm going to say is a message to the rest of the world. They have been watching this drama play out for a few weeks. We've learned a lot of lessons, but you know what? Through adversity, it makes you stronger. And we want our allies around the world to know that this body of lawmakers is reporting again to our duty stations. Let the enemies of freedom around the world hear us loud and clear. The People's House is back in business. We will do our duty here. We will serve you well. We will govern well. And we'll make you proud in this institution again. We're going to fight every day to make sure that is true. I look forward to the days ahead. I genuinely believe in my heart that the best days of America are still ahead of us.
So those are the words of the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson from Louisiana. We talked to Representative John Curtis, who was in the room just moments ago, getting that perspective in terms of how this all came about, how they went from a very fractured and frayed conference to absolute unanimity in the vote today, not a single dissenting vote, and what that actually means in terms of moving forward and what some of those keys were. And amazingly, and not surprisingly, the real keys were some humility in the person seeking the position, the fact that they didn't just come up with a list of grievances, but they actually had a plan of how to deal with the tough issues of the day. And we're going to watch that plan as it relates to Speaker of the House Mike Johnson in the hours, not days or weeks or months, in the hours ahead. That's going to begin to unfold. Everything from aid to Israel and Ukraine. We're 22 days away from a funding of the government requirement that will need to be done. Otherwise, there will be the shutdown showdown. We'll be back once again. And so there's a host of things that need to be taken up and need to be dealt with. The fact that he laid out a plan for his colleagues, I think, is one of the things that got him to the speakership, as well as that humility and that ability to actually just listen and say, we're going to do this in a different way. We're going to do it with transparency, we're going to do it with honesty, and we're going to do it with accountability. And that will be a great test. So it's the big bite and the long chew. New Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, sworn in just about 30 minutes ago to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And now the work of not grievance and not politicking and posturing, but the work of governing will once again begin. All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's football season, NBA basketball season, and a season of important and sensitive stories. Elections at home, war abroad. So depend on Tim and Amanda for the latest breaking news from 5 to 9. Get analysis and discussion with David Dejanovic and Boyd Matheson. And updated news and traffic as you drive home with Jeff Kaplan. In this season, rely on KSL for certainty. We have you covered at KSL News Radio.
What is the biggest threat to your retirement savings today? Believe it or not, it's taxes. That's right. You could be paying a lot more taxes in retirement than you realize. Learn more in a free report. 3 retirement tax traps that could wipe out your savings. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. This free report reveals how you could avoid 3 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. To get this free report, call 801-896-9622. Don't needlessly overpay your taxes in retirement. Get this free report now by calling 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Peyton was a very kind and giving person. At 15 years old, he sustained life-threatening injuries from a motorcycle accident that took his life. His family felt like Peyton would want to save others and made the decision to donate his organs. Because of their generosity, his organs saved a 2-year-old girl, a teenage boy, and others that were desperate in need of life-saving organs. Go to DonorConnect.life and read about what it takes to become a donor. Did you know many people think that they're too old or not in good enough health to be a donor? Anyone can be a donor. If you were told that it could save the life for someone close to you, or even a stranger, would you donate? Finding out more on why you should become a donor is easy. DonorConnect.life can walk you through the process and what it takes to simply sign up. Check yes to become a donor when you renew your driver's license. Give hope. Heal life. DonorConnect.life.
Save $2,500 on a new furnace and air conditioner from Any Hour Services. For more information, call Any Hour Services or schedule a free estimate online at anyhourservices.com.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from the station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the House of Representatives has finally elected a speaker, Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Second, a Category 5 hurricane has hit the Pacific coast of Mexico near Acapulco. Third, an outbreak of a bacterial disease linked to raw milk has been traced back to one dairy in West Jordan. Right now, 72 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. If you're just tuning in, we've been covering over the last hour, of course, the election of a new Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson from Louisiana. And we're going to step aside from that coverage for a moment to now get on to some of the big issues that the new Speaker, along with the rest of the Congress and the rest of the country, are going to have to deal with all around the world. And really interesting, some political leaders are resurrecting a phrase used over the years to describe foreign adversaries, particularly after 9/11, the phrase axis of evil. And today, many are using that same term, axis of evil, to describe Iran and Hamas, Hamas's brutal attack on Israel, as well as other adversaries, Russia and China in particular. So sort of a new framing of the axis of evil. And to many people, it's a shrug of the shoulders, and maybe that's an overuse of a tired catchphrase. But there is a historical significance to that phrase. I think it carries some weight in framing conversations about foreign policy. And that's what we're going to dig into. And we're going to actually start back in January of 2002. With the national rage after the 9/11 attacks, they were still smoldering. And, of course, then President George W. Bush declared that Iraq, Iran, and North Korea and their terrorist allies had formed an axis of evil.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
And so that was President Bush. And, of course, President Bush tried to warn the world that these aggressors and terrorists would be opportunistic in their cooperation with one another, that it was not really about ideology, religion, and long-term – it was only about long-term ambitions. It was really how that was all coming down. And so, again, that goes all the way back to January of 2002 in the aftermath of 9/11, that idea of the axis of evil. Interestingly, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell from Kentucky invoked the phrase axis of evil on Sunday's Face the Nation when he was asked whether he opposed all diplomacy with Iran.
There's an axis of evil in the world: China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And we need to stand up to the axis of evil, not try to do business with them.
So interesting, framing that in terms of that axis of evil, that we need to stand up to them, not try to figure out how to appease them or to do business with them. I think that's going to be a really crucial part of the conversation moving forward. Also interesting, President Biden has used much more demonstrative language than many of his predecessors in terms of describing what is going on and what has gone on. And the way he actually framed this was on October the 14th, as he described Hamas.
I also want to say a word about the situation in Israel. The more we learn about the attack, the more horrifying it becomes. More than 1,000 innocent lives lost, including at least 27 Americans. These guys make Al-Qaeda look pure. They're pure evil.
Pure evil was the word, and clearly staking out the moral high ground and that moral clarity of good versus evil. There's lots of things to debate in the nuances of everything, but there is some moral clarity in terms of what evil looks like and what it is. On Monday, White House Strategic Communications Director John Kirby appeared on Fox News and was asked if the president agrees with the assessment of this being a new axis of evil in the world.
I think the president would characterize multiple countries, nation states here, who present unique and pernicious threats and challenges to our national security. Certainly North Korea is in that group, obviously Russia. China certainly presents threats and challenges in the Indo-Pacific, but so does Iran. So, I mean, we haven't slapped a name on that group, but those four countries clearly present unique challenges and threats to our ability to continue to lead this rules-based order that's been in place since World War II.
Some really interesting analysis on that by our friend Olivier Knox at the Washington Post in his Daily 202. He talked a lot about this idea of the axis of evil and the framing of it and why that matters, why it does carry some weight to it in terms of framing how we're dealing with international incidents and how we're dealing with a lot of the struggles and big challenges all around the world. The interesting thing is, as you look back on those moments and as you look back at those in leadership positions during times like this, the words that are chosen are always interesting to me. And sometimes it is a moment where you have a leader, whether it's a president, whether it's a military leader, who stands up and uses a phrase that suddenly becomes a rallying cry or a galvanizing force in the nation's psyche in terms of where we are and what should come next. And I do think it's interesting. One of the questions posed by Olivier Knox of the Washington Post was using this term, axis of evil, was really this idea of this imminent threat, this clear and present danger, existential threat to our security and our future as a nation. And so as you start to throw the terms around and you start to look at all of the analogies, you say, is Ukraine the largest ground war in Europe since World War II? What are the profound ramifications for the European continent if Ukraine fails and Russia continues its march? Will there be more disputed territory that will become more impactful on American interests? Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, I think, described a really interesting, and he's very uniquely positioned in all of this. He actually led the military effort to crush the so-called Islamic State. And as he described what Hamas has done, he said, it vividly reminds me of ISIS. But what we've seen from Hamas, it takes that evil to an entirely different level. And so the terms matter, the framing matters. It leads us to a discussion in terms of the principles that will ultimately drive the kind of policy we have in dealing, whether it's with an axis of evil, whether it's with terrorists, whether it's with our enemies, and what we do with our allies all around the world. The words have meaning, and the meaning really does matter. Well, that wraps up hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but stay with us. Much more to come in hour number two. We'll start with Elaine McCusker joining us to talk about Ukraine funding, and why that just might have a really good return on investment. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
Listen at home on any smart speaker.
And in your car at 102.7 FM.
This is KSL News Radio,
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour. An outbreak of people getting sick from raw milk has been traced back to one Utah dairy farm, and its license to sell raw milk is now suspended. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
The Utah Department of Health found the same strain of bacteria making people sick at a dairy in West Jordan called Utah's Natural Meat and Milk. Other dairy farms around the state still have licenses to sell raw milk, but health officials warn against it because only pasteurized milk is really safe to drink. The point of pasteurization, just to kill that bacteria, like the one that's been making about a dozen people sick in the last few months.
This isn't the first time this has happened in Utah. 25 outbreaks of this same bacteria have been reported over the past decade. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The new House Speaker, Mike Johnson, the Louisiana congressman, gave a floor speech not long after he was elected, and ABC's Liz Landers has the latest.
After 3 weeks without a Speaker of the House, a little-known Republican Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson was elected to the top position. Johnson taking the dais as the Speaker for the first time.
We stand at a very dangerous time. I'm stating the obvious. We all know that. The world is in turmoil. But a strong America is good for the entire world.
Johnson becomes the 56th Speaker of the House. Every Republican president voted for him. Democrats have criticized Johnson, a close ally of former President Trump, for voting against certification of the 2020 election. Liz Landers, ABC News, Washington.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day 105 points, while the NASDAQ is down substantially 318 points right now. And our KSL weather. Look for some rain coming in tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
If you're like me, age 65 or older, congratulations. By today's standards, we shouldn't be alive. We didn't wear bike helmets. We drank from the hose. We played outside all day and got cut up and broke bones. We rode in cars that didn't have seatbelts, let alone airbags. We did things that people today wouldn't dream of. But that doesn't mean we're invincible. These days, we have doctor appointments, multiple medications, and chronic conditions to manage. That's why there's Teladoc Health. Teladoc Health brings together all of your health care into one program, including everything from primary care to chronic care management. We even have coaches to help you with diabetes, hypertension, and weight management. And for non-emergencies, someone is always available to speak with at any time during the day or night, no matter what your health issue is. Teladoc Health offers everything needed to live healthier ever after. Learn more at teladochealth.com. That's TELADOC health.com.
Tay-Tay was a typical girl that loved pink, singing, and all kinds of animals. At 3 years old, she tumbled off a horse and received a traumatic brain injury. Her family prayed for a miracle, and when they realized their daughter would not survive, they made the decision to donate her organs. Because of her donation, 4 other people received her organs and tissue, allowing others to live. Go to donorconnect.life and read about what it takes to become a donor. Did you know many people think that they're too old and not in good enough health to be a donor? Anyone can be a donor. If you were told that it could save a life for someone close to you, or even a stranger, would you please donate? Finding out more on why you should become a donor is pretty easy. DonorConnect.life can walk you through the process and what it takes to simply sign up. Check yes to become a donor when you renew your driver's license. Give hope, heal life. DonorConnect.life.
Fall in love with Five Alls Restaurant this autumn. A Salt Lake City original. Cozy atmosphere, perfect for all your special occasions. Now open Wednesdays too. Come dine at Five Alls.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
The accident and delays we had on southbound I-15 going from Midvale to Sandy have cleared. We're back to a really nice drive on all the Valley freeways, and we still have the final cleanup of a crash at 5600 West, 2300 South. Visit the new R5 Homes Flex ADU house, offering stylish living with an independent yet connectable basement for rent or housing parents and children. Tour R5 Home to get $1,000 rewards purchase or referral. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, warmer with south winds today, a high of 73. It'll turn colder tomorrow. We'll see some rain and continued cool weather through Saturday with a chance of showers. Right now, 73 degrees, partly cloudy and windy in Salt Lake. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As the war in Ukraine drags into another cold winter, as new war has broken out with Hamas invasion in Israel, America's involvement in these regions and other regions around the world is being called into question. Can we take care of our own problems here at home while still providing aid and military resources to conflicts around the world? And is it in our best interest to do so? And beyond the headlines of the big questions, the answer might be, is this the right return on investment? And is this the best investment for our freedom and for our future? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
We are very pleased, as always, to have joining us on the program Elaine McCusker, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. She's a former acting Undersecretary of Defense. And Elaine, it's always great to have you on the show to get perspective from the global view. And there's so many things going on right now between Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan is always still in the picture. And it always comes back to this question around what are America's interests in the world. We often hear, well, we're going to act in our best interest. You're always good at getting us beyond that headline into what that really is and what that really means.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I think, what people may not really be fully aware of and what, kind of hearing in the debate, that supporting Ukraine is actually a really good deal for America. And there's a few ways to look at this. And I think there's also a number of misleading ways to look at it that can lead to dangerous misunderstandings about what we are really doing related to Ukraine. So, for example, you hear things like, the U.S. is sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, or we should focus on China and Taiwan, our own border, and now Israel, and not Ukraine. Like we have to make that choice. And so I think it's important to keep a few key facts in mind. First, we are not just sending billions to Ukraine. In fact, and, particularly from a DoD perspective, much of the money appropriated to Ukraine is spent in the United States. It is U.S. companies manufacturing the ammunition, the weapons, and the equipment. And in many cases, they're doing this to backfill our own stocks that we are using to help Ukraine because their needs are so time sensitive. And second, the U.S. is a global power. We are not a one-trick pony, and we shouldn't be. We can support Ukraine and Israel, prepare and partner with Taiwan, and secure our own border. And third, and in some cases most important, supporting Ukraine is in our best interest. I think, if we look at this just through a motivated self-interest lens only, which I am not suggesting we do, but if we did, it still makes sense. It makes sense strategically, it makes sense operationally, and it makes sense financially. And I can talk a bit more about the return on investment in each of those areas for the United States.
Yeah, and I do want to dig into those, and as we go into that space, I love that you're just saying let's get out of this fake fight and false choice is what I always like to call it. This false choice of we're doing one or the other. I love the perspective and how important that is for our listeners to recognize, one, that most of that money is being spent on U.S. companies who are doing the ammunitions, the equipment, all of those kinds of things, and that this ultimately is in our best interest. And so dig into the ROI on all of that.
Yeah, so first, strategically, the U.S. will be better off when Ukraine beats Russia. And supporting Ukraine's victory could also begin to redeem American credibility as a reliable, steadfast partner, which will also only make us safer. And to those who worry about China and a potential Taiwan scenario while we are helping Ukraine or Israel, such a scenario is actually more likely if we don't help Ukraine and Israel. I mean, I think the message that we send to China, if we pull back our help from Ukraine or Israel, or, even our work in trying to shore up the Indo-Pacific, is to basically encourage China to go ahead and attack Taiwan because we've made it clear we're not going to do anything about it. From an operational standpoint, even the Navy's commander in the Pacific, when asked last week about, this issue of him not having what he needs to deter China and all that kind of thing, even he said that the United States is a global power and we can deliver effects and execute our deterrence responsibilities across the globe. Now, this is coming from the guy who is in charge of the Navy in the Pacific, telling us that America should not be a one-trick pony. And speaking of operational benefits, we can only benefit if Russia has less military capability. While at the same time, as we, sort of help and assist Ukraine, we are learning about both our own vulnerabilities and about Russia's vulnerabilities in real-world operations. And just to give you an example of what that means, a few months ago in May, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency estimated that it could take 5 to 10 years for Russia's military to rebuild its conventional forces, which seriously impacts their ability to conduct operations in Ukraine or anywhere else for years to come. So with the threat from Russia gone or greatly diminished, some of the billions that we're currently spending on an initiative called the European Deterrence Initiative could be invested in other priority areas. So that further increases our return on investment. And speaking of dollars and cents, and I know that we can get a little bit dorky on this, but the return on investment for our Ukraine aid shows bang for the buck that is measured in increased U.S. security, industrial-based contracts and jobs, and significantly reduction in Russia's capability. So spending a small percentage of the defense budget and an even smaller percentage of our GDP to take our second largest adversary off the board for a decade has to be seen as a bargain.
Yeah.
At the same time, Russia is estimated to be spending more than 30% of its budget on the war in Ukraine. So while they bleed cash and capability, we devote single-digit percentages of just the defense budget towards avoiding such costs.
Wow, that is such critical thinking right there. That again, you're not hearing a lot of that in the headlines and a lot of the chatter that's out there in terms of that. I mean, that is real ROI in so many significant ways. I want to dig into just a couple of the things that you mentioned, Elaine, as we move this forward. One is just the important message. You talked about the U.S. really reestablishing itself as a reliable partner and ally. I have been saying in all of this, and not just Ukraine, it's Israel, it's the others, the messages that we're sending are important for our allies and for our enemies. And you've just analyzed that for us in terms of what that does to reinforce those that are with us, but also the deterrent that it creates for those that are against us is every bit as significant as we try to move this forward and create space, again, in our best interest.
Yeah, you don't want to continue to bring up the past, but in the wake of our disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, and we followed that up with almost breaching our debt limit earlier this year and kind of the debacle that went with getting an agreement on that. And then over the last few weeks, we've not even been able to elect a Speaker of the House, which in the past was really a non-dramatic event. I mean, until earlier this year, the party that's in the majority would elect their leader and off we would go. And instead, we've had this sort of really embarrassing situation that has helped our adversaries in portraying us as divided and dysfunctional and distracted and unreliable. And I think we want to, use this time to remind ourselves that that is not what America is. We are resilient. We are compassionate. We can do more than one thing at once. We're one of the few, if not only, countries that can do that. We can project power. And so I think, when we look at how this is best for us, even just from a messaging standpoint, like leaving aside the dollars and cents, which, I always like to focus on dollars and cents as well. I mean, there's just benefits to the United States all the way around. And I think I read something recently by one of my colleagues, Hal Grant, who put it good. He said, it's very hard to conjure a scenario in which the U.S. cannot muster the commitment to help Ukraine survive a real war and then somehow shifts into overdrive to prepare for a hypothetical one. And so, again, I think our sort of steadfast commitment to Ukraine actually does us good. And the kind of commitment I'm not talking about whatever it takes as long as it takes. I'm talking about what it takes to win and to win now.
Right.
Because, again, I think that's in our best interest.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point as well, that it's winning now. It's not just in time is just not enough because that just extends it all along. But to be able to do it now, again, all of the benefits that come in the wake of that, including what Russia has been spending and just that it sets them back by nearly a decade, is really significant. As always, Elaine McCusker, one of the great thinkers, and helps us get beyond the headlines on this kind of issue. You can just say, we shouldn't be sending money anywhere but to the border or to inner cities or whatever it is. No, this is a great investment. It's in our best interest, and it is part of what we do. And I love the way, just to end, Elaine, I love the way you frame this in your piece, that even if we're not caring about global leadership and confronting, violence against the innocents, it is still in our best interest to be engaged on all these fronts: Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and beyond. Elaine, as always, thanks so much for providing us that deep dive insight, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Great. Thanks a lot for having me.
Always great to get Elaine McCusker's perspective. And so there are real return on investment opportunities as we look at playing a role on the world stage. And it's one that you have to dig into. It's one you can't just accept the talking points from any political position. But you have to look at it in terms of, how does this actually protect our interests as a country? How does it help promote freedom and democracy around the world? Not about being the world's police officer, not about trying to control everything. We obviously have our own issues here at home, but there is real return on investment if you look at it in the right way. And there are opportunities to actually create a more stable and lasting peace in crucial places around the world. And that's always in our best interest.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Colder weather is on the way.
We've got to get those sweaters and jackets ready.
And storms, too.
Thursday, Friday, 40s and 50s, mostly cloudy, some rain developing.
We have you covered as the seasons change. Stay updated with traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s. Mornings and afternoons on KSL News Radio.
What's the biggest threat to your retirement savings today? Believe it or not, it's taxes. That's right, you could be paying a lot more taxes in retirement than you realize. Learn more in a free report, 3 retirement tax traps that could wipe out your savings. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. This free report reveals how you could avoid 3 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. To get this free report, call 801-896-9622. Don't needlessly overpay your taxes in retirement. Get this free report now by calling 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622. Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. I want you to know that it's the little things that count. Any remodeler can say they treat customers right when it comes to siding, gutters, windows, and exteriors. It's hard to know for sure. If a contractor uses cheap generic nails instead of super grippy ridge shaft nails for your siding, would you even know? If they use cheap $4 caulk to install your new windows instead of paying $9 a tube for the good stuff, could you tell by looking? It all comes down to the details and trust. At RGS Exteriors, we only do things one way, the right way. We never cut corners. We never skimp on details. We never do less than the job requires. That's why we offer our industry's exclusive 10-year everything guarantee. And it's why we have the happiest customers. If you need any gutters, siding, or replacement windows, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsutah.com. That's 801-280-3110 or online at rgsutah.com.
Hey guys, do you know what makes Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City different? You. Every Revive treatment and medication is personalized just for you. Revive has the experts that guys go to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their daily performance. Since 2011, they've helped thousands of local men suffering with the symptoms of low T and ED. Their goal is simple, to get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. Your best performance requires more than generic ED medications or a low-dose testosterone booster at a low-ball price like you find online. Revive medications are custom compounded, affordable, and guaranteed to resolve your issues. Stop dealing with the symptoms of low T or ED. Book your T-check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit us at revivemenshealth.com.
Hey.
Dave and Dujanovic.
I hope our listeners take away lots of information, but also a new way of looking at a topic.
Ideas, their thoughts, the things they thought they knew. I hope that gets challenged when they listen to us.
I've had listeners stop me at the grocery store and ask me, what is your show about? And I'll tell them our show is anything from politics to your pocketbook.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, after 3 weeks of battles and multiple votes, there's finally a Speaker of the House. Second, an outbreak of bacterial illness has been traced to a dairy in West Jordan that sells raw milk. And third, the government of Mexico is expecting to hear about heavy damage in Acapulco after a Category 5 hurricane came ashore this morning. Right now, 73 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
The Tech Hub is we're going to invest in critical technologies like biotechnology, critical materials, quantum computing, advanced manufacturing. So the U.S. will lead the world again in innovation across the board.
That was President Joe Biden earlier this week announcing plans to subsidize technology hubs across the country. On paper, that may sound like a grand idea. This clearly is not the first time a president has tried something like this. President Trump, President Obama both tried to spur economic development with this kind of investment and subsidies. So we want to get to the results. Were they successful? Did it work? What did it mean? And what does this particular proposal from President Biden mean for the future prospects of tech hubs? Is this same song, different chorus, or is there actually a path to something that's going to be a little bit better, a little bit more productive? And to help us break all of that down, as always, Christian Britschke, reporter at Reason, Reason.com, covers mostly housing and transportation policy along with regulation, and a great piece in Reason about President Biden's plan for these tech hubs. And Christian, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on again.
So first, for our listeners, just describe what are these 31 subsidized tech hubs? What does that mean?
Yeah, sure. So through the 2022 CHIPS and Science Act, that makes $10 billion available for investment in, the high-tech industry, materials, AI, things like that. And President Joe Biden, he's using $500 million of that to provide federal subsidies for these tech hubs, which are supposed to bring together research institutions, private business, and federal dollars to different centers across the country that'll then work on producing more of this technology, research, innovation, the like.
All right, and so as we look at, again, we've seen this movie before, just to be really clear, both Republicans and Democrats have tried things like this. Give us some examples first from history, because we always like to start with the historic perspective, whether it was President Obama or President Trump trying to do something similar, and what did it ultimately do in terms of results?
Right, so there's been a couple different programs that have tried to do this similar kind of, it's called, place-based economic development or place-based subsidies, basically an attempt to, get certain industries to subsidize the clustering of certain industries in places where they don't already exist. So the most recent attempt was, it's still an ongoing program, but Opportunity Zones, which is a provision of the 2017 Republican tax reform bill that basically gave special tax credits, tax exemptions for investors investing in Opportunity Zones, which are these, census tracts that have high concentrations of a certain high concentration of poverty, which are selected by each state's governor. And the research on Opportunity Zones has been pretty uniformly, or I shouldn't say uniformly, but generally been pretty negative about their effects. We found that there's generally not been any increased commercial activity as a result of these Opportunity Zones. That also they've generally tended to go to places that were already kind of like on the higher income places, and also places that were already experiencing economic growth. So just people taking subsidies to invest in places that they were already going to invest seems to be the consensus of the research. Something more similar to what President Biden is doing is President Obama's efforts to make these manufacturing innovation hubs, right? These kind of public-private partnerships or a mix of private research dollars, university funding, and then federal funding would come together in these like institutions, these hubs around the country where they would work on, spurring manufacturing innovation and new technology, and then also new jobs. And the results from there have also been pretty disappointing. The places where they've gotten federal subsidies, employment in these sectors has been pretty anemic. So there hasn't been some big explosion in growth from, dropping federal subsidies around to, these different hubs under the Obama program either.
Yeah, and so why is it that we're back to this kind of the same pattern? It seems like the try again mantra seems to be alive and well in Washington in all its forms. Is this just one more example of where those with power and influence are getting more power and influence by taking advantage of these kinds of things. The investment gets to come in where it's already going to go anyway. And why are we still going down this same path? Is there a better way that we should be thinking or ensuring that things really play out in the marketplace as opposed to a lot of subsidies and trying to pick winners and losers?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a better approach, which is not to do this kind of thing. I mean, there's a reason. It's always very attractive for politicians to want to, take some federal subsidies and say, hey, we're going to kickstart growth in this area that doesn't have that many jobs or doesn't have that much investment already. You can imagine how that's just, that's politically attractive. And it also allows you to kind of spread benefits around to different, maybe, political allies or wherever they are distributed in the country. But there's a reason that there's not investment happening in the first place in these areas. And generally that's because the Biden administration is kind of explicit about this. They don't like the fact that so much high-tech investment goes into existing, centers of innovation, which are large cities, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Austin, where have you. But there's a reason that a lot of investment and employment in the tech sectors goes to these cities, which is that this idea of agglomeration, that when you have a lot of firms and workers clustered together, that makes it easier for collaboration. It makes it easier for ideas to spread. Workers can move between companies more easily, bringing ideas with them. Firms can hire from a larger pool of skilled workers. And you have a larger customer base already, so that allows firms to specialize as well. These are the benefits you get from kind of bigness, agglomeration. And you're going to lose those benefits if you subsidize companies to move away from places where innovation is happening and try to create that out of whole cloth and federal subsidies in smaller communities where you don't have that kind of that agglomeration, intense intermingling of capital and labor, which is what makes cities work in the first place.
Yeah, well, it's a great piece at Reason.com, and it really is that thing we have to be careful of whenever government is putting money into places. Is it just going to swing districts that are for cronies and the wealthy and well-connected in Washington, D.C., or is it really going to drive that new innovation and really be a positive force in all of that? Christian Brisky, reporter at Reason.com. And Christian, always appreciate your perspective on this and helping us work our way through the morass and the maze that often these kind of programs turn out to be. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
All right, again, that's Christian Brisky from Reason.com. And you just have to be careful. These kind of hubs, they sound great, sound innovative. It's a lot of federal dollars going into places, often picking winners and losers. And in the end, I think we all end up losing just a little bit more. So we'll continue to track that. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour. Utah Jazz basketball back tonight at the Delta Center. The Jazz bringing back the promising core that got them off to a hot start last year, including All-Star Lauri Markkanen, as well as 3 new rookies, all of whom are getting some early praise from head coach Will Hardy.
I could not be more excited about each of those guys individually and collectively, sort of what they represent for our program going forward.
The Jazz have their work cut out for them from the get-go, taking on the Sacramento Kings. Tip-off is at 7, and you can hear the game live here on KSL News Radio. Utahns are learning more about fire safety, and that's being credited for a decline in the number of human-made wildfires since 2020. KSL News Radio's Alessandra Harris has details.
The Fire Sense campaign was launched in 2020 when there were nearly 1,000 human-started wildfires in the state. Now, in 2023, that number has dropped to just over 300 human-started wildfires, nearly a 2/3 reduction, making 2023 one of the best non-wildfire seasons in Utah history. Federal and state fire officials took time today to thank Utahns for their increased vigilance and remind them that fire safety must continue to be practiced even in the winter months.
More information about the Fire Sense campaign can be found at utahfiresense.org. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Congressman Mike Johnson sworn in today as the 56th Speaker of the House. The Louisiana Republican won with 220 votes, meaning every Republican voted for him. Johnson said he believed there was a reason the speakership happened at this moment.
I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture The Bible is very clear that God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us.
Johnson says his first bill will be to provide aid to Israel. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closed the trading day down 105 points. The NASDAQ down 318 today. The S&P 500 closed trading down about 61 points today. And our KSL weather, it'll turn a lot cooler and a lot wetter over the next couple of days. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
What is the biggest threat to your retirement savings today? Believe it or not, it's taxes. That's right. You could be paying a lot more taxes in retirement than you realize. Learn more in a free report. 3 retirement tax traps that could wipe out your savings. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. This free report reveals how you could avoid 3 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. To get this free report, call 801-896-9622. Don't needlessly overpay your taxes in retirement. Get this free report now by calling 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 50 features.
Ooma?
Yep, switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Find small business calm at ooma.com/radio. That's OOMA.com/radio.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed? Because only the Sleep Number Climate 360 smart bed lets you each sleep up to 13 degrees cooler or warmer on either side, while you both sleep at your ideal level of firmness, comfort, and support, your Sleep Number setting. And now our all-new next-gen smart beds have temperature benefits, so you sleep better night after night. And now, save up to $500 on our new Sleep Number smart beds, only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have trouble in traffic for Utah County drivers, and this is in Spanish Fork. We do have the road closed due to what looks like a medical situation, and officers at the scene. Is closed in both directions. Highway 6 at Center Street. That's approximately 1400 East. Again, this is in Spanish Fork. You will need to avoid the area and take an alternate route. Live at the Eccles presents Straight No Chaser on Thursday, November 2nd, 2023 at the Eccles Theater on Main Street in downtown Salt Lake City. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, warmer with south winds today, a high of 73. Then tomorrow it turns colder with rain coming, and we'll see continued cool weather through Saturday with a chance of showers. And right now, we're at 73 degrees with partly cloudy skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Far too often we see in the headlines and hear in the news all about how our country is just too divided to get anything meaningful done on a host of political, cultural, civic issues facing the nation. But what if we looked at our Constitution and our past to realize that we actually aren't all that divided? We may have simply cast aside some of the ways in which we can disagree with each other while still moving the country forward. To me, that's always a crucial part of this conversation. And especially on days like today, we can talk about the dysfunction we've seen in the House of Representatives over the last 3 weeks. Representative John Curtis joined us last hour and said, look, in the course of history, those 3 weeks, while weeks that were lost, that were important, will be pretty small in the grand scheme of things. More important, the institutions held. And there were lots of things to come together around in terms of what we need to do together. And it is that together portion of the program that actually matters. This past weekend on Sunday Edition on KSL TV, I was fortunate to have Yuval Levin join us from our nation's capital to talk about his vision of what Yuval likes to call constitutional unity. Constitutional unity. Now, of course, Yuval is a friend of this program as well. He's the director of social, cultural, and constitutional studies at the American Enterprise Institute, was a founding editor of National Affairs. One of the great thinkers and great writers in our country today, someone that I have looked to for a long period of time, someone who understands the perspective of history and the idea, and I love this idea, that the Constitution holds the keys to national unity. So I asked Yuval specifically about this concept that he's been writing about in great detail of late, this idea of constitutional unity. Here's what he said.
You know, we live in a moment where I think a lot of people have the sense that our constitutional system is part of what divides us, that its failures are somehow responsible in part for the intense divisions that we all feel as Americans. And I think it's important to see that that's actually not quite right, that what's dividing us is our failures of constitutional practice, but that our Constitution, as it's written, as it's intended to operate, is actually a great force for unity, that it was intended to hold a divided society together, and that it could still do that if we allow it to do the kind of work that it's written to do. And what I try to do is really help people see the concept of unity, the particular notion of unity that is implicit in the American Constitution, which, as you say, is not unanimity, but a way of living together. Unity for us, unity in the Madisonian sense, doesn't mean thinking alike. It means acting together. And I think the question of how can we act together when we don't think alike is the question the Constitution is meant to answer.
So working together, coming together when we don't think alike. And let's remember, we don't want to think alike. If you want to live in a place where everybody thinks alike or nobody can express dissent of any way, shape, or form, you can go to Russia, you can go to China, you can go to North Korea, you can go to Iran. You can see what that looks like. It's not what we want. So oneness is not sameness. We always come back to that. And I love the fact that Yuval is pointing out that, look, it's not the Constitution is not what is dividing us as a country. It's not the constitutional principles, it's constitutional practice. Because the Constitution is actually designed to hold together people who really disagree on a whole host of things about how the country should function. That's what it's supposed to do. As always, Yuval shared some great insight on Sunday Edition on KSL TV as we talked about the constitutional system. And I asked him why we as Americans shouldn't buy into this claim that we hear far too often that we're just too divided to get anything done.
Yeah, look, I think there's a kind of implicit notion now in our public debate that the problem is we're not agreeing enough. I don't think that's really the right way to understand the problem. I think the problem is that we're not disagreeing properly. What we've forgotten how to do is not agree, but disagree. And our system is really meant to facilitate disagreements in such a way that they ultimately point toward accommodation and bargaining and compromise and practical solutions. It's implicit, it's understood in our system of government that Americans are always going to be a diverse and divided people. You know, James Madison, Federalist 10, says just in passing, as long as the reason of man continues fallible and he's at liberty to exercise it, different opinions will be formed. In other words, in a free society where we get to think for ourselves and express our views, we're not all going to agree. I think anybody who's been part of any community, however unified it is around core principles or beliefs or faith, knows that the life of a community is a life of disagreement. There's no way around that. The question is, how can we turn that disagreement into a way of life that allows us to resolve problems, that allows us to be one while also still continuing to be distinct? America is always going to consist of a lot of different communities, a lot of different people with different ideas about how to live. but we're also one nation with one common history, with one common vision of the future. And ultimately, our politics is there to allow us to debate, to argue, to figure out a way forward given our divisions. And the institutions of the system, and I think in this term, especially about the United States Congress, is really there to facilitate and enable constructive disagreement. The failures of our system now are failures of enabling disagreement. They're failures of accommodation and bargaining. And I think that's a lot of what we've forgotten to do in our politics and what we have to remind ourselves by considering the nature of the Constitution, by reacquainting ourselves with our own political tradition.
So as we look at our own political tradition, as we look at those founding documents, they actually do have the roadmap. They have the keys of how we overcome what we see as division and disagreement, but help us actually work our way across that. There's a bridge across all of that. And when we realize that it's the principles, those founding principles contained in the Constitution, that are actually the glue that holds us together, it's not what divides us. So as I concluded my conversation with Yuval Levin on Sunday edition on KSL TV last weekend, we got into the roadmap and how the Constitution does provide a path, some directions, some key points and markers along the way that can help us transcend that division and get to the kind of unity, again, not oneness is not sameness, but the kind of unity that will get us one in terms of focus and direction as a nation.
I mean, ultimately, the way it works over and over is by bringing contesting groups, differing factions, into contact with each other in ways that compel them to negotiate or to compete. And those are related ideas, but they're not the same. Competition, there's a lot of competition in our system. It's fundamentally a competitive democracy. You run for election, you offer ideas to the public, you see who gets a majority and who doesn't. But one of the important things about the American system and what makes it distinct even from many other democracies is that we don't consider the competition of election day to be the final word. What winning an election gets you is a seat at the table. And what happens at the table is ongoing bargaining and negotiation. We have a lot of competing power centers in the American system. There's 2 houses of Congress, there's 3 branches of the federal government, and then there's federalism where there's layers of governing institutions. So that even when you win an election, you find yourself surrounded by people who have different views than yours, and often they want an election too. And what you have to do is find ways to accommodate, to negotiate. Our system is particularly geared toward compelling us to deal with each other, often literally to make deals with each other when we don't agree. And that is a way to find working accommodations, to find a way to live together, to allow ourselves to remain different. And I think that's really important about the American system. It's not intended to erase differences. People are going to raise their kids in different ways. They're going to worship God in different ways. They're going to think about what matters and prioritize things in different ways. And yet our political system is there to enable us, nonetheless, to work together on common problems and to find ways that we can all live with. It's, in a sense, a system rooted in a kind of pessimistic view of human nature, a sense that what we're able to do is find ways to accommodate, is find ways to arrive at acceptable, broadly acceptable solutions. But what that allows us to do is to be free, to remain free, to live as we choose, to live as we believe we should, while still addressing common problems in a common way. I think that's really the beauty of the American system. Yeah. And a lot of Americans now have lost their appreciation for that. They're very frustrated with the system. They want, when they win an election, they want all the power. They want narrow majorities to be empowered. And our system again and again says no. We have to balance majority rule with minority rights. And, that's the great challenge of liberal democracy.
Majority rules, minority rights. It's that kind of coming together that actually matters. And I think you've all got it so right when you talked about this idea that a lot of us think, well, my person won the election. We should have all the power. Or my party won the election, so we should be in charge of everything. But it doesn't work that way. That's not the way the founders designed it. They designed it so even, and maybe especially when you win an election or when you gain power, all of that gets you is a seat at the table. And you get to sit at a table with other people who also won an election and who also have right to a seat at the table. And then you come in contact with your differences. And then you begin to deal. And as we deal with each other, we have conversations, we get to accommodation. You can stand on core principles, you can negotiate on the rest, and you can get to solutions that actually move the country forward. Big thanks to our friend Yuval Levin, again, joining me over the weekend on Sunday edition on KSL 5 TV. You can check it all out there as well. We're going to go ahead and step aside for one last commercial break. We'll come back with some final thoughts on a very busy day here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's football season, NBA basketball season, and the season of important and sensitive stories. Elections at home, war abroad. So depend on Tim and Amanda for the latest breaking news from 5 to 9. Get analysis and discussion with David Dejanovic and Boyd Matheson. And updated news and traffic as you drive home with Jeff Kaplan. In this season, rely on KSL for certainty. We have you covered at KSL News Radio.
We've been talking a lot today about the fact that if you want to have confidence in a business, an organization, or even in yourself, there has to be transparency, predictable process, and accountability. Well, when it comes to weight loss, that's exactly what you want. You want transparency. You need to know what you're getting into, a predictable process where you know the results will happen, and then some accountability to actually get it done. That's what SOTA Weight Loss is all about. My journey on SOTA Weight Loss gave me those critical elements of having real confidence in the process. I had transparency in my own coach and nutritionist to help me every step of the way. The process was predictable. The results were just as promised. I lost 37 pounds in less than 90 days. I'm almost 2 years in, and the results, the accountability, continues to roll on. And I'm not the only one. Thousands across the country are experiencing the same. You can do it as well. SOTA has all the transparency, the process, the accountability you need to be successful. As I always say, when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, no time to lose, only time to win. Start your journey today at SOTA Weight Loss, SOTAweightloss.com.
Hey folks, it's Doug and Kathy with Window World.
Doug, can you believe it's been 20 years?
What's been 20 years?
Well, since we opened our first Window World store.
That is amazing. Our motto today is the same: quality products, professionally installed, backed up by our awesome warranty.
And our team shares those very same values.
Come see us today. We have stores in Murray and Spanish Fork for your convenience.
Experience the Window World difference. Call 801-281-8111 or visit windowworldutah.com.
And we promise no baloney.
Made to shine. Real stories from Shane Company customers.
So last week, my boyfriend said, I have a surprise for you. And I totally thought he was going to propose, but it was just tickets to a baseball game. Then during the game, Will You Marry Me was up on the big screen, and he was down on one knee holding the most beautiful engagement ring. It was so sparkly.
Our expert jewelers set every center stone by hand, so you'll shine forever. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929.
Did you know 96% of Americans lose an average of $111,000 in Social Security income? And it's because they claim their benefits at the wrong time. Don't lose $111,000 in Social Security income that's rightfully yours. Learn how you could wring every nickel out of your benefits on Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL. News Radio 102.7.
It is October. It's the beginning of the holiday season. Hi, this is Doug Wright. I want to talk about my friends at the Western Nut Company. They have been part of our family traditions now for years and years. They've been around almost 60 years, and you're going to find so many wonderful things for this time of year, any time of year. Let's talk about Halloween. It's just around the corner. All kinds of wonderful goodies for Halloween. Maybe you just want a big bowl of nuts to have there while you're watching the football game. Western Nut can take care of it all with an amazing selection. Now, don't forget that Thanksgiving is just around the corner. Whenever you're invited to a special event like a Thanksgiving dinner, it's always a nice thing to take along a hostess gift. They have a selection of items sure to please your hostess. Corporate giving. This is so important, and Western Nut, they are the experts. Make sure that your clients and your great customers and friends and neighbors have the very best from the Western Nut Company, 434 South on 3rd West, or go to westernnut.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact us at aimyourdigital.com for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. We are Bonneville Salt Lake. Your success starts at aimyourdigital.com.
Tim and Amanda, Utah's Morning News.
Trust is more important in our business, Tim, than it's ever been in my lifetime, in all of my many years of being here at KSL, because there's so much misinformation out there. And there's so much information that is heavy laden with opinion. When you come to us in the morning, what you get is the news. You get what's happening without a lot of spin or opinion and without any misdirection. That's just the pure, simple thing that you get.
When you talk about the misinformation that's out there, which there is, sometimes those stories just change from one morning to the next. And so hopefully you feel like each day as new information becomes available or we learn new things, this was certainly true during the pandemic, this is the place where we're going to share that information with you and talk about the things that are going to most affect your life.
Wake up with Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Utah Jazz getting ready to open the NBA season tonight against the Sacramento Kings in the Delta Center. Second, Utah had a lot fewer wildfires this year. Firefighters say it's because we were smarter. And third, the new Speaker of the House says it's no accident that he's now in leadership. Right now, 73 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, it's been a very busy news day, of course, with things continuing to unfold in the Middle East, as well as in Ukraine, as well as in the House of Representatives. And just within the last few hours, the Speaker of the House race mercifully came to an end after 4 attempts, 3 weeks, a lot of votes, a lot of grievance meetings. And finally, Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana, was able to capture the gavel in a unanimous vote by Republicans. Again, a party that had been very fractured in getting behind anyone to be the speaker. And Mike Johnson was able to get every vote from the Republican side to actually take the gavel and begin a term as Speaker of the House. And so as we look at that, as we watch that all played out, very interesting to just see a lot of the things that were going on in the room. The rooms were very interesting over the last 48 hours specifically. And as you looked at the conversations that were going on and how things were being done. So if you looked at the way that Kevin McCarthy led as Speaker of the House, if you looked at the way Steve Scalise tried to take that mantle when he was given the opportunity and failed, the way Jim Jordan was then given a second go-round to have a chance to be the speaker and failed on the floor of the House as well as in the conference. And then Representative Emmer also having that opportunity, and they all failed. And interestingly, Mike Johnson was able to navigate all of that in a pretty unique way. Now, there'll be lots coming out in terms of what he's for and against and how he's voted in the past and perspective on a whole host of different things. I think the most important thing, one, the institution's held. That's the biggest thing. The second thing is nothing else matters other than watch what's next. And I do think it was significant that Mike Johnson, in his first address from the chamber of the House of Representatives, told his colleagues on both sides of the aisle that we all need to be mindful of the lack of trust and that everybody contributes to the lack of trust the American people have in the institution that is the House of Representatives.
We all know that we also live in a time of bitter partisanship. It was noted, and it's been on display here today. Right? When our people are losing their faith in government, when they're losing sight of the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world, I think we got to be mindful of that. We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end.
So I think it was important that he called everybody out and said, look, everyone's watching. The world is watching. And so we need to make sure we're doing this in a way that matters. He then went on to say that what he would do as Speaker of the House would be to decentralize power and create predictable processes.
The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here. My office is going to be known for members being more involved and having more influence in our processes and all the major decisions that are made here, for predictable processes and regular order. We owe that to the people.
So I think that's an important thing, and it's something we can actually put a pin in, and now we can begin to watch. Will Mike Johnson decentralize power? Because speakers, both Republican and Democrat, have centralized power in the Speaker's office for 2 decades now. And it is part of the political problem in our nation's capital. They have centralized power in the Speaker's office. And so can he decentralize it? Can he get more people involved in the process? And can he create what he described as a predictable process? Predictable processes always deliver better results because you can have an honest conversation about everything because you know how it's going to play out. And then finally, he committed to what I think are the real important components: transparency, honesty, and accountability.
And I want to make this commitment to you, to my colleagues here and on the other side of the aisle as well. My office is going to be known for trust and transparency and accountability, for good stewardship of the people's treasure, for the honesty and integrity that is incumbent upon us, all of us, here in the People's House.
Transparency, honesty, accountability. Now we all get to watch, and that's what he asked everyone to do on both sides of the aisle, is watch what's next. He's already canceled the next 2 weeks of recess for the House, and he's called them back into the chamber to get to work. We'll watch how it plays out. We'll look at what goes right, what goes wrong, and what needs to be done better to do the people's business. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
Listen at home on any smart speaker.
And in your car at 102.7 FM.
This is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.